So maybe what is codependence, Craig?
Hmm. I think it has to do with needing to be needed. When we get right down to it, when we're codependent, we need someone to depend on us. And we get our sense of importance and self-esteem and even love from having somebody in our life who needs some sort of rescuing, whether that's emotional or some other kind. I think that kind of gets at what codependence is.
Yeah, and I think most of us like to be needed. So when does it
Sure.
become codependent?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways we can tell that it's not a good dependency, that it's not actually interdependency, which is basic to our humanity. I think we need each other as people. We're naturally social, but when we start helping to the point where it's tearing us down, or when we're in toxic relationships where the other person is mistreating us, but we're still staying with them, or in situations where it's actually insulting to the other person because they really don't need the help that we're offering. Those are all indicators, I think, that we're actually indulging in codependency rather than healthy interdependency.
Yeah, and how can you tell if you or the other person in a relationship is the codependent one?
Often both people, if we're talking about like two people in a relationship, often both people have a bit of it, but it's kind of like a split in the wounded healer archetype where the wound goes to one person and the healer goes to the other. And so invariably, people who are highly codependent are wounded healers, or at least they're in that archetypal situation. Let's put it that way. And instead of being both, they're putting the wounded part onto the other person who then acts it out for them. And then they're claiming the healer position. So there's this polarization of roles that over time become quite rigid. And so one person's in the one down, help me position. And then the other one is in the I will help you and be your healer and all that position. And they never get to trade, um, which is one of the ways you can tell when a relationship's actually more healthy is that we all have times when we're vulnerable or sick or whatever it is, and we need some caretaking. But that shouldn't define the relationship. And it does when it's a codependent relationship.
Yeah, so when someone has identified the codependence in him or herself,
Yeah.
then what can a person do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of what drives this is the codependent person is wounded somehow. They have some injury or deep complex that they've never healed, and they're trying to heal it through saving other people. And there seems to be a kind of unconscious logic that says, I will be healed and made whole if I help them. And the irony of it is that that never works because if you don't heal them, and who can really heal somebody else, right? As adults, then the thing never changes. And if you do, you lose interest and you move on to the next person to heal. So back when I did psychotherapy years ago, I had a client who was stuck in that pattern, and I liked how she put it. She was in real estate, and she was a heterosexual female in maybe her late 30s, and she said, about herself, she said, I just feel drawn to men that are fixer uppers. And I was like, there it is. And if they're healthy, she doesn't want them. So it's the wound that drives this. So if we can heal the wound, if we can get in touch with it and work where it really is, which is inside ourselves, it sets the dynamic out of action. So, and I've seen this in other people. I've seen this in myself. I'm actually on many different levels. Friendships, romantic relationships, work relationships, whatever. I'm not drawn to those situations anymore. In fact, they kind of make me cautious and worry, and so when I'm in a situation where I see somebody in a one down position, then I start to wonder if I can actually be of help, or if it's up to them to help themselves. Any decent person will physically rescue you if you're in trouble, right? If you're about to step in front of a bus, we would hope that people who are near you would pull you back out of the way before you get hit, you know. But when it becomes a situation where you're being asked to add your energy and interests and passion to a life or a set of lives that are continually depleting you, then you have to wonder if it's really doing them or you any good. But I think dealing with the wound internally is part of the journey of getting beyond
Yeah, and I think that is quite an optimistic message you have there.
that. I think so. It's not something we have to stay in.
Yeah. So you developed this course on Jung platform, Codependence, how to identify and heal.
Yeah, and during the course we go through all this. I talk about here's the different things that make up codependency, and here's the signs to look for being in a codependent relationship, not just romantically, but also at work and with family members. And then during the course, we went into some of where this comes from, not just upbringing, but also the family system itself, working in some ways unconsciously to keep people being codependent rescuers and how to deal with that when it comes up. And then we looked a little bit at some of the myths that tell us about codependency too. So from different cultures as well. And then toward the end, talked about specific things we can do to heal from this and be the full intensity of that wounded healer archetype as it plays out in our lives, instead of splitting it and projecting it onto somebody else.